Well, welcome back everybody. My name's Andrew and you're watching the Kelley's Country Life. And if this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome. If you like the content, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So I'm just gonna make a quick little video today. I've had quite a few people ask since posting the last garden video, hey, how do you put up your vegetables? So I've got a lot of picking to do today. I've picked a ton of vegetables yesterday, and I'm gonna show you one way in this episode. We'll get into canning and all a little later in the garden season as stuff produces a little more. So I just released a garden video a couple days ago, and look at the explosion of growth here. Corn is putting on left and right. I've got ears silking out everywhere. Looks like we're gonna have a good amount of corn this year. And look at this, I don't know, what is the corn? 8 foot tall now? Crazy growth in this stuff this year. We've got our first sunflower putting on a head here. Looks like this one's gonna have multiple heads. And as you can see, everything else is just in full bloom and going crazy. So what we are mainly after today is squash and zucchini, especially zucchini. I went from getting basically none about 3 to 4 days ago to now I'm picking close to 5 gallons of this stuff a day out of these few plants. I've got zucchini coming out of my ears. Look at these big, beautiful things. Now, sadly, we had a severe thunderstorm come through here the other day. Lots of wind and lightning, and it broke my 2 biggest squash plants, just snapped them over. You can see they're dying on me over here. And my squash is rotting away. All right, so I'm already now over 5 gallons a day. I've then filled this bucket up. I gotta go back inside, empty this bucket, and then I'll come back out and finish picking. This is a crazy, crazy amount. This corn over here is done completely silked out and it's filling out at a rapid pace. Wow. I'm seeing several ears per stalk. Now here's what blew my mind and caught me off guard. I've got Blue Lake bush beans planted everywhere in the garden. All of them over there. They look healthy, look good. They just got blooms on them, no beans yet. So I assumed it's gonna be a few more weeks. I come over here and check these beans that are planted in and amongst the corn. They're already completely filled out. Like I probably should have picked them a day or so ago. And it done this last year. There's something about planting beans with corn. They do very, very, very well. You always hear about them being called companion crops because corn is nitrogen loving, beans are nitrogen fixing, but I wonder if it has something to do with it being in the shade in here as well. There's just something that the beans really like being amongst the corn. And once you start picking beans, boy, it does not stop. I'll be picking beans every single day. Look at these beautiful bush beans. I have been picking tomatoes for a while. Actually, you can see these plants are just about at their limit. They've been alive for quite a long time. But with that said, I have more tomatoes coming right behind these. Planted some early, planted some late. Holy moly. So the beans are just kicking in. Peppers I've been picking for quite a while. It's just what I got today. Look at this. That is a 24 by 24 sink stacked all the way down to the bottom. That is so much squash and zucchini. And then, of course, the tomatoes keep on producing too. So for those of y'all that are new to the channel or haven't seen this room, this is my processing room. So one of the first buildings we put on the property was this metal shop. And then I come in here and build a processing room and a storage room. You can probably hear I have an air conditioner running in the background, and I got an amazing, and I mean amazing deal on a 3-compartment sink. Now I typically don't use the compartment underneath here because I bought a big 4-foot cutting board so I can come in here and process meat and vegetables. So it's a good place to kind of make a mess. And then you can see right over there in the background, we have one of the largest chest freezers that we could find. So I process and clean everything right here and carry it straight to the freezer. And then as we need it, we'll get a few bags out of here, go over to the house. Now this is also where I do my canning, although we're still a little early in the season for canning. So we'll get to some videos on that a little later when I start doing pickling and a few other things. So I'm gonna go ahead and get everything tidied up, and I'll show you how I process especially the squash and zucchini. That's the main thing we're gonna be doing today, because contrary to popular belief, most people believe that you either have to blanch them or you just can't freeze them at all. They don't freeze well. Well, for certain recipes, that's true, but I'm gonna give you all some recipes that we use these for, and the way they come out of the freezer is perfectly fine. Actually, I'll even include some videos at the end of this where we made a year or two ago of Tiffany cooking some casseroles and other dishes with these right here that come straight out of our freezer. And it's amazing recipes. So you absolutely can freeze and put up these types of vegetables. So what I typically do is I'll take this 11-inch wide vacuum seal material. And by the way, I buy this in bulk off of Amazon. You get a really good deal that way. I don't do the Food Saver brand stuff. You save so much money going with the off brand, and it works very well. I'll try to remember to put a link in the description for this. So I'll go ahead and make several bags before everything gets wet and dirty up here. And then I like to write the year on here. And when it comes to squash and zucchini, as you can see, I make large bags because the #1 meal that we make out of squash and zucchini is casseroles, and you need quite a bit for a 9x13 baking dish. And if you're interested, this is a Food Saver bronze. This is called the Game Saver. I bought this thing, I don't know how many years ago, 10, 15 plus years ago, maybe even longer than that. This was one of the only ones that they offered with a lifetime warranty. Although if it ever tears up, I'm not even gonna try, I'll just get another one. But the Game Saver bronze is actually designed, it's got a better heating strip in it. And you'll notice with these vacuum seal machines, you get a entry-level model or a cheap one. After 2 to 3 times of sealing a bag, it'll start flashing and it wants to go in a cool down mode. I can seal bag after bag after bag with this before it'll ever ask for a cool down period. So this is made for a little bit higher production. Now when I have a lot of squash and zucchini to cut up like this, typically I just cut it up with a nice fish fillet knife, cut chunks that I want. But there's so much to do here, I'm actually gonna use what's called a mandolin. A lot of people should be familiar with this, but it has a blade right here that raises up and down depending on the thickness that you want. It's just razor sharp, so you gotta be careful. And I can just run the squash and zucchini down this and it'll cut the chunks off. I'll show you that in just a second. Now some of this zucchini, for example, is so big, you can't even really run it down conveniently, so you can just bust this in half and then run it down the mandolin. Take all your pieces up, put it in a bowl. Once I have a full bowl, go straight into vacuum sealing. So it really helps to put this on top of a pan or a plate, so whatever you cut drops straight to there and then you can dump it in the bowl. It's just that much less picking up off the counter that you have to do. So we'll just take this and just start going with it. Gotta watch your fingers when doing this. Now that's just starting to get a bit big for the bag. We'll cut that in half. Now this mandolin also comes with a handheld attachment that you can put down when you're getting close like that to keep you from cutting your fingers. I find it a little cumbersome to use though. And I'll just keep repeating this process. Now we don't have as much squash as I would like because, well, the storm tore it up really bad. But we like to mix our squash and zucchini before we bag. They go great together in casseroles. So the other thing that we'll use this for, just like it is, put it in a pan with a little bit of onions, olive oil, and some good seasoning, and we'll just saute it down. It works really good like that too, even straight out of the freezer. Okay, so now when I get a full bowl like this, if there's 2 people helping you, you can just hold the bag up there and have somebody dump it in, but I have found by myself, just grab it with your hands. And this is a good time to talk. Most people believe that you absolutely have to blanch. So basically what that means is get you a huge pot of boiling water and you'll actually dip the vegetables down in there, and it's supposed to help preserve them, create freshness, help with the texture, things like that. Although, I'm just gonna be honest with you, anytime you freeze vegetables like this, they're gonna come out soft, somewhat soggy. They're not gonna be crisp because they're just not fresh. That's the way that it's gonna be. So you have to be smart about what kind of meals that you use this for once you pull it out of the freezer later on. So a squash and zucchini casserole is by far our favorite way to use this because you're already gonna cook that stuff down in a casserole anyways, which is gonna make it nice and soft and tender, the way this is already gonna come out of the freezer. Again, sauteing down in a pan, you're softening that stuff up in the pan, mixing it with olive oil and seasonings and onions, and sometimes we'll put okra in with this, frozen okra, mind you, and that is another awesome way. If you're cooking any kind of a meal with this and that needs to have a fresh crunch to it, it's just not gonna happen. You're not gonna pull this stuff out of the freezer and go throw it on top of a salad and expect a crunch. It's just not gonna have the texture that you're looking for. So you do limit yourself on what you can truly use this for. By the way, another amazing recipe. Tiffany takes this squash, I basically call it a soup. She steams it and cooks it down in a pressure cooker, and she'll add bacon to it, some other seasonings, and almost thicken the sauce up in it. It comes out so good. It's like a squash bacon soup. Oh man, it's so good. All right, so I'll get my bag about that full. This is gonna vacuum seal up and look small, but that's enough to make a big pan of sauteed vegetables, and that's also enough to add to the casserole along with the other stuff that Tiffany puts in them. Now here's the important part. I'm gonna vacuum seal this, and I'm gonna seal it twice. So that was one seal. I'm gonna pull the bag down a little further, close this off. I'm gonna seal it again. That's very important because as this bag is vacuuming down and shrinking, it puts creases in the top of the bag. It's just naturally gonna happen. Plus I just put wet vegetables in there, especially when you're doing like meats and things like that, and you can get blood up top. All those things keep you from sealing the bag very well. And if you ever do wind up seeing failures in the freezer, it's typically that top seal. It's not the bottom seal because that's sealed perfectly. You had a dry, clean bag that was laid perfectly flat. I can't speak today. So 2 seals just like this, 99% of these bags will still be vacuumed just like this whenever I go to pull them out. And then straight over here into the freezer this goes. And this freezer has dividers in it. So I like to put this year's vegetables in one divider and keep them separate from last year's. That way we're rotating over and getting rid of the old stuff before moving into the new stuff. Now, as you've seen, I just cut up a bunch of banana peppers, vacuum seal those, freeze them. I'll do that with extra bell peppers. And again, they're gonna come out a little soft but there is certain meals to where frozen peppers will work. If you're just looking for that flavor and want to saute them up in dishes, I mean, there's tons of dishes you do that with peppers. Want to throw some on pizzas. Fresh is always best, but if you're going to have excess, definitely not going to throw them away. All right, and lastly for the day, I just snapped the ends off of these beans. Got them nice and clean. We will freeze these. Frozen beans do very, very well. We will take these out later on and just boil them down in a pot with some bacon or anything else for flavor like you typically do beans, and they do great. Now you could also can these, but as you can see, this is far more convenient. And since I'm already in here with the vacuum sealer out and working on other vegetables, I tend to freeze the majority of my vegetables. Now one thing that I am going to try this year, I planted a lot of extra beans for it. I'm going to try to pickle some beans. I've had a couple people tell me that they pickled beans and they loved them. They said the crunch was still there, the flavor was good, and I love pickled okra. I love making dill pickles. So pickled beans kind of piqued my interest, and we're going to have so many here coming in before long. I think that'll be a good canning video to kick off the year with. All right, so now it is cleanup time, and then I will pick for the next 2 to 3 days and repeat this process. And I've been out here quite a while. So for the next several weeks, I'm devoting a ton of time to the garden. That's just the way it is. But in the next few weeks to a month or so, I will put up our entire year's worth of vegetables too. Actually, I won't have to do squash and zucchini, but a few more times like I did today. I've already got 2 full bins over in that freezer, and then I'm done. That's enough for the entire year. We'll just start giving the rest away. Then we move into all the okra, all the beans, and it's looking like I'm gonna wind up with a few hundred ears of corn out of that little garden. So I'm gonna need a ton of room in the freezer just for the corn. All right, you asked for this. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the way that we put up our vegetables. Like I said, as we start getting into more canning, I'll include that on the channel. And right here at the very end, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll have some videos pop up to where you can see where we've done some recipes with some of this stuff right here as well. Don't be scared of freezing vegetables. While yes, it does change the texture, there's still plenty of meals out there that you could cook and use these types of vegetables, and they turn out awesome. Thanks for watching.